The Protégé Podcast. Your fortnightly look into the biggest things happening in the legal profession for the next generation of lawyers.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Protégé Podcast. This is our stream dedicated to law students, grads and juniors right across the country, bringing you in-depth and insightful conversation from those who are the next generation of leaders in law. My name is Grace Robbie, and today I'm very pleased to be joined by Mia Madafferi, the founder of Grey Rock Consulting, a consulting agency that specialises in guiding individuals through complex communication and negotiations. Mia, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm very excited.
It's such a pleasure, and thank you for coming and joining us in the studio today.
I know, it's very exciting.
I'm very excited. Now, today, Mia and I will be exploring how lawyers can pivot from traditional practices into more disciplinary and innovative legal pathways. We'll also be discussing whether she believes lawyers are understanding that there isn't just one straight career path in law, and if many lawyers are now exploring these alternative professions and opportunities. As a starting point to this conversation, Mia, would you sort of tell me a little bit about yourself and your initial years working within the legal profession?
Yes, sure. I started, almost 20 years ago. That's scary to say. I graduated from Murdoch University in Western Australia, and I started as an article clerk at Freehills, as it was then known, back in Perth. And it was a brilliant experience. It has its ups and downs like every legal career does. Yeah. And then I ended up moving to Freehills in Melbourne. And then I went in-house at a time so I always specialised in litigation. And that was at a time where everyone said to me, no in-house legal team takes litigation or back-end lawyers. It's all front-end procurement lawyers. But I managed to sort of break down that little stereotype and went in-house as a back-end lawyer. And then my career sort of evolved into always in litigation, but always around or into construction, major infrastructure litigation.
Amazing. And what drew you to practice within the litigation space?
You know, it's a funny one when I tell this story. So the reason why I decided to be a lawyer, I went on an excursion in year 5 to Fremantle Jail, and they did a mock trial, and I was Ned Kelly's lawyer. And I was successful, and at that moment they had me. I was like, this is it. This is what I'm doing for the rest of my life. And then when I went through university, you know, I wasn't the student that was top of the class all the time. I mean, I got good marks, got my law degree, but I wasn't that student. And at university, and I'm sure they still do it, they had mock trials. Yeah. And so I went into the mock trials and I won the mock trial, which was so exciting and completely unexpected. Yeah. And at the time, Freehills was sponsoring that competition. Yeah. So when I won it, they brought me in and they did all the wonderful things, you know, like you get free toast when you work here and fruit. And I was like, ooh, as a student, it was so exciting. So I deviated from I'm going to be, a prosecutor to, okay, I'm going into a major law firm here. But I don't know why, but I always loved the back end. And I think as I've progressed in my career and where I am now, and you reflect on all of it, the key to a fight or a dispute or a disagreement, whatever it is the personalities, it's the emotions, and there's more to it than the scenario and the law. Definitely. And I've always loved the people side of things, always. It's always where I've been different in my legal career. Yeah. So that's why I ended up in the dispute side of it. I liked figuring out why people were upset or what their grievance was or what the problem was and finding a way to bring them together somehow.
It's such a more personal sort of area within law. You're not sort of, in the back end doing sort of, other sort of, parts within the legal profession. You sort of get to see from face value how you're helping people and like how your work is contributing to people's lives as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, I got all the comments. Someone told me because I don't know if it still happens this way now, but when I started as an article clerk, we had to do 3 6-month rotations in different sections at Freehills, and then you choose where you want to end up. And people would say to me, don't become a litigator. You're wasted there because you're good with the people. So you want to be in the front end negotiating the contracts. Yeah. I actually had a partner once call me effervescent like lemonade. And it wasn't a compliment, really. What he was actually saying was, you're too bubbly for this industry. And all those sorts of things happen. But then you also get the great mentors and the great guides. And I really have had some fabulous people. You know, when I started in Perth, Stephen Penglis was my supervising partner, and he was wonderful. Yeah. So you have people who help you and guide you, and you just got to follow your instincts, which is really hard to do when you're very junior in a profession of lots of people telling you, you know, which way to go and why you're wrong.
Definitely. And I guess speaking on your time working within HSF, how did you find working in a big law firm coming straight out of university? And, you know, it can be like a very daunting and sort of scary experience.
Yes. It is all of those things, because you're very junior, you've just come out of university, you are working in a firm that is one of the biggest and best nationally and now internationally, but it wasn't at the time, amongst some incredible minds. So it is intimidating, it is daunting, and you think, what could I possibly do? Or no, I'm just going to be quiet in case I make a mistake or in case I say the wrong thing. But again, the people you're working with makes such a big difference. And of course, I've got examples of working with shockers and not supportive people and, you know, the list does go on. But I also, especially when I started out in Perth, the team I ended up in with Stephen, he was very supportive and he really guided. He would throw you in the deep end to see, you know, how you went, but he never did it in a way where you could lose a client, you know, $100 million trial or something like that. But he really did give you those opportunities and support you. So I'm really grateful for those people and those experiences to sort of guide you through. But for anyone listening who's starting in a big law firm, again, I wasn't, you know, the top student at the university. I wasn't any of those things. So you do go in thinking, oh my gosh, I might completely embarrass myself and make a fool of myself here. But you won't. And yes, you'll make mistakes, but it's totally to be expected. And as they say now to my children in school, you know, mistakes are your friends. Yes. And that's how you learn. So, you know, give it your best shot and surround yourself ideally with supportive people who are going to help you.
That's amazing. And thank you for giving us a little rundown about what your career and what of that time within HSF looked like. And after that, you decided to move into an in-house role as a legal counsel for a couple of organisations.
Yes.
What prompted you to make that shift, working from a big law firm that many people in Australia would have heard from to going in-house?
I knew at the time that my strengths would be best placed outside of a major law firm. Yeah. And that's no criticism to Freehills themselves. Yeah. I had a great career at Freehills. But, you know, the personal side of things, the way I related to humans and the clients and lawyers on the other side, I knew it was a strength and I knew it wasn't something that I could really step into in a big law firm working for clients, you know, from the law firm side of things. So I did have an opportunity to go in as a litigation lawyer to Siemens in-house. Then I went into Lendlease and then into Sydney Metro. And I loved it because, you know, your client is the business. So you are working with people from all areas, you're not just working with lawyers. You're not, again, no criticism, but in a law firm, you are going through the supervising partner and they're dealing with the clients and you're always kind of a step removed. And as you get more senior, that changes. But going in-house, I was dealing with the CEO, the CFO, the managers, you know, everyone in the business that was relevant to these matters. And it was great. And coming up with ideas and being pragmatic and solutions in ways that you don't get to do, strictly speaking, at a law firm.
Yeah. When you decided to make that jump, did you feel supported by those around you from leaving a big prestigious law firm to sort of moving within in-house? Did you feel like what were people's initial reactions when you told them about this career pivot?
Oh, now you're really testing my memory. It was a hard conversation to have. It's never easy leaving a role.
Yeah.
The partner I did the most work with at that time was Ken Adams and yet again, a fantastic man to work for and learn so much from him. But he knew as well that my strengths and he knew that the people side was something I was, and I don't mean it to sound in a entitled, you know, fluffing my own story or anything like that, but it was it was a good step for me. And of course, you know, you get the whole, we'd love you to stay and it's a loss and all those sorts of things. But I had made my mind up.
Yeah.
And he was really supportive of the move, which was fantastic in the end.
That's amazing. And then since also another career pivot that you've had as well, you've gone through all the stages throughout your legal career. You have decided you've opened up your own consultancy practice. Again, what inspired you to sort of take this new approach to practicing law, and what was the experience of launching your own practice as well?
Ooh, that was scary. To speak very honestly, my world turned upside down. Is why the pivot had to happen. Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of people who have a calling or a pull towards something different, the voice is there, and it gets louder and louder and louder. And sometimes you get into a position where you're then forced to make that pivot. So, you know, everything turned upside down. And what I'm doing now, I've had to do it myself. So this is something that I've done personally, I've done professionally. I know how hard it is. I know that there is a framework, or I've created a framework actually to navigate it because there wasn't one. Yeah. But when I look back at my career and my life, the lessons were always there. And you know, they say the lesson repeats until you learn it. By gosh, did that lesson repeat until I learnt it. Yeah. But I also found that it got bigger and louder until I was really given no other option but to listen and to do something about it. So essentially, you know, as many people listening, I think I'd be pressed to find a lawyer who hasn't had to deal with, whether it's a boss, colleague, client, lawyer on the other side, client on the other side, whoever it might be, who hasn't been, and, you know, I'm not a psychologist, I don't diagnose, I don't like labels, but to save you from me sitting here for 20 minutes explaining personality traits, you know, who hasn't had someone who is narcissistic, who's high conflict, who, you know, isn't that rigid black and white, my way or the highway. And they're sitting there going, who on earth is this person? Then they're sitting there thinking, no matter what I do, it doesn't work, it backfires, it gets worse. We can't seem to find a way through with this person. Whatever I suggest is a problem. Whatever I do, it's wrong. There's an explosion. And it just feels like the only way through this is to concede or to agree to something that isn't really a great outcome for my client, for example. So we've had all of those. You know, people obviously have that interaction in their personal life as well. So Grey Rock Consulting was founded originally for the individual, for the person who is in the daily hell, and I'm not dramatising it, of having to communicate or negotiate with these personality types. So people, and yes, it obviously happens a lot personally in the space of divorce and intimate relationships falling apart. It happens with family members, friends, work colleagues, bosses. It is everywhere. But the majority is people in relationships that are, you know, separating, or people who are getting divorced. And I just found that they would be receiving a barrage of communications, emails, text messages, phone calls, whatever it would be. And they would be full of false allegations, threats, intimidation, harassment, lies. The list goes on, full of gaslighting. And you've got a person who is sitting there, first of all, going, who on earth is this person? They're scared. They're feeling a lot of guilt. They're feeling a lot of shame because how am I in this situation? They are scared for what this all means, whether it's for their finances, for their home, for their children, whatever their personal circumstances. And they just don't know how to get through it. And whatever they try, no matter how they justify, explain, reason, provide evidence, nothing works. Nothing works. And if you haven't gone through it, you don't get it. It's as simple as that. So you'd also find people that were trying to, or would get advice from well-meaning friends and family, but the advice was terrible because they don't understand the personality type. And it's not a criticism, it's not calling people silly, but it is such a personality type that you can't comprehend it. And that is a compliment to everyone who can't comprehend it. You just can't fathom that someone would operate like this. So that's how it originally began. I found that there was a lot of information out there on these different personality types, no matter what you want to call them, which is wonderful. The awareness of it is growing. Yeah. Again, wonderful. I have a lot of views on people who say, but everyone's a narcissist these days. We could have a whole podcast on that. But what I found was a gap in the how-to, in the practical application, in the tools, what works, what doesn't work. And the reality of these personalities is once you try to implement these tools, they get worse. Yeah. They don't say, oh, Grace, I'm so sorry. I didn't realise I crossed a boundary there. Yeah. My bad. I'll never do that again. Yeah. They get worse. Yeah. So navigating it alone is hard. It's unnecessary. And so that's where it all came from originally. So it's a long spiel, but I'm very passionate about all of this because I know so many people are stuck in it. Definitely. And that's how it all began.
Yeah, I can tell how passionate you are. And I definitely want to jump on later in the podcast episode about some of the tips and sort of advice that you would give to lawyers who are themselves experiencing this, as it feels like a very alone process as well. Like not a lot of resources are out there to be able to gain, but that is something I want to touch on. But just in general, how rewarding has it been being able to, help these people who are dealing with a lot of different and sometimes difficult personalities? How rewarding has it being able to just give them a bit of help during this process?
I can't put it into words that will do it justice because doing this was terrifying for me. It really was a leap of faith out of, let's be honest, and generally speaking, a legal career. It's a secure job. It's good pay. It's well respected. Of course, people go, oh, lawyers. But, for all intents and purposes, people go, lawyer, great, good on you. Yeah. So stepping into this was scary. Yeah. Stepping into something that people don't necessarily, it's new. So people don't necessarily understand that. Sorry, what are you doing? All of those things, you think, what am I doing? But again, it just got louder and louder and louder until I was like, I'm doing it. And you have to be okay with taking a leap, and maybe it doesn't work. You have to be okay with that. But it's not easy as a lawyer. We're high performers. We like to be right. We like to succeed. It's really, really tricky. But when I've had clients say to me, and I don't do it for the compliments, but when I've had clients say, oh my gosh, you were the missing piece of the puzzle. I had a message the other day and she said, I now sit around with girlfriends and we're talking about something that's happening and we all go, what would Mia say? I'm like, oh, I love that. Yeah. So it really fills me with so much joy because I knew that this was needed, but you never know what's going to happen. Yeah. So
after the break, we'll explore why it's important for lawyers to understand that they can pivot away from traditional careers and apply their legal skills in innovative and impactful ways. So Mia, as someone who has taken a different path and used their legal degree beyond the traditional law firm setting now, can you share why it's so important for lawyers and young lawyers specifically to understand that they can pivot cross disciplines and apply their legal skills in innovative ways like you've done yourself?
Yes, I'm hopeful, really hopeful, because I am not a young lawyer anymore. Oh, Grace. I'm really hopeful that as younger lawyers come through, that they are open to other paths. Yeah. And there's nothing wrong with wanting to be a lawyer. There's nothing wrong with, I want to become a partner of a law firm. Yeah. I want to become general counsel at a company. I want to become a barrister. There is nothing wrong with that. And if that is your calling and your heart's desire, by all means, follow it. But that's not for everyone. And I think especially the profession of being a lawyer, it is well respected. Yeah. It is high performing. It is traditional. We love a process. We love a well-trodden path. Yeah. So to step out of it is not only scary, but you'll probably also have those outside voices saying, oh, really? Are you sure? But this is a well-paying job, or you could be partner in 38 years, all those sorts of things. So you might get those doubts from others and from yourself about what you're doing. But I also flip it and go, well, as a lawyer, you've got an incredible skill set, don't you? You can understand complex ideas, complex legislation. You're able to hopefully read things and synthesize them in a way that anyone can understand. Yeah. You spot risks easily. You mitigate risks. You're well-reasoned, ideally. So these skills are easily transferable. And I also find that stepping out and taking a leap of faith myself, when you say to someone, I'm a lawyer, now in my business, I don't give legal advice.
Yeah.
But when I say I'm a lawyer, people trust you that little bit more. Oh gosh, she's not going to tell me to do something that then my lawyer or someone else says to me, what did you do? So they have a little bit more faith and trust in you because you should be well reasoned and not make them do anything too crazy.
Definitely. Do you feel like this message of lawyers having the ability to pivot and sort of go towards careers that aren't just within law firms is gaining traction, or do you feel like it's still relatively uncommon and not sort of maybe given the same sort of regard as a legal pathway and legal career?
Yeah, and I guess, again, that's old sort of ways of thinking and stereotyping, isn't it? That, as a lawyer or, as a doctor or an engineer, you're held in that much higher of a regard. Look, I don't know whether people are doing it a lot or not, and gosh, it would be a fascinating thing to know of how many people have an idea but they're too scared to follow through on it. Maybe with COVID and things becoming a little bit more flexible, people are doing their side hustles and trying something different. But if that calling is there, my experience is it will just keep getting louder until you can't ignore it. So some people aren't as old and slow as I am and they take the leap and they do it.
Yeah.
But it does depend on where you're at in your life and, you got mortgage repayments, you got kids' school fees and all those sorts of things, whether it's a bit harder because you've still got to pay bills and things like that. But I mean, if you have an idea, go for it if you can and, find a way to get it out there and be totally okay with it being a wild success, or be totally okay with having to pivot. And I've even pivoted within my own business already and working with lawyers now, which I didn't anticipate. So be open and don't be stuck in a particular way or things happening a certain way because, gosh, the best laid plans, always very interesting.
Yeah, you can never play, like within the legal profession or any sort of day-to-day thing, you cannot have a 5-year plan, I feel like. It chops and changes. But I guess touching on what you said about law students, sort of following their gut feeling and their heart, sometimes I feel like it's so difficult for them to do so is you've got so many senior people around you telling you, well, no, this is the traditional way that you should go,
Yes.
I've done this, everyone else does this. So sometimes hearing what you would, hearing your mentors give you that such advice, you're young, you're going to follow what they say. Sometimes you don't back yourself in that regards as well.
Yes, absolutely. And it's understandable when you have someone quite senior to you who's had a successful career say, oh, that's, hopefully they don't say that's a silly idea. But if they say, I wouldn't recommend that or things like that, it's, I think you take people's opinions on board. But at the end of the day, if you have a vision that someone else doesn't have, it's your vision and they can't see it. And if they haven't walked in your, if they haven't walked the same steps or if they don't understand the idea that you have, that's okay. It's not their idea. And it also doesn't mean that if you try it and it doesn't work that they were right.
Yeah.
It also doesn't mean that. Because sometimes things not working out or failure or rejection is just a bit of a redirection somewhere. And that's okay.
Yeah.
I just think lawyers, we are all smart and high performers and we like to get things right. So the idea of being okay with failure, it's uncomfortable.
Hate it.
So yes, you have to get comfortable in stepping out of that well-trodden path and seeing where it takes you.
I completely agree. And I guess something I wanted to touch on as well. So maybe, like you said, this is sort of not becoming the normal for young lawyers to want to not go within a big law firm. It happens. But do you feel like universities should take maybe a greater role in promoting these alternative career paths? Because I know when I was studying law and you would have the careers fest and I have all the big law firms lined up, it was sort of only those opportunities that were really promoted to law students. So I just thought, did you feel like universities are doing their part or need to do more in regards to promoting these alternative and non-traditional, quote unquote, legal careers?
Maybe. I think it would be great to see within universities, if you're studying a law degree, yes, we need to do contract law. Yes, we need to do tort.
Yeah.
Absolutely, you've got to do all those sorts of things. I'll never forget the snail in the bottle case in tort. Like, who doesn't know the snail in the bottle case, So you have to do those things, absolutely.
Yeah.
But it would be great if we could start thinking outside of the box, because you can be a good lawyer by knowing the law and knowing how to apply the law to the facts of the particular case in front of you.
Yeah.
But to be a great lawyer, it goes well beyond that.
Yeah.
And there's people, there's emotional skills, there's all sorts of things beyond it, thinking outside of the box, not being a black and white, yes, no, you can do it or you can't do it. All those sorts of things make you a great lawyer and make people enjoy working with you, better outcomes. And, I don't know if it's happening. I don't think it is. Let's get some of those things into university, maybe as options or things that you can learn as well, because they're vital.
100%. The skills that are so important to being a lawyer as well. You're just sort of taught the information.
Yes.
It's not in a practical sense as well. So I feel like what you said, recommending universities to spread out a bit more, go against the sort of traditional quote-unquote studyings of a legal career and legal degree.
Why aren't you taught in law school power dynamics and abuse of power? Because you will face it. You will go into law firms in your career and you will have, it doesn't have to be sinister, but you will have people senior to you telling you things where you're like, hold on a minute, I don't know about that. Well, that doesn't feel right, or I want to do something different. Why are we not learning about these things? It's fundamental to life.
Obviously, you talk in the first sort of section of the podcast, your vast legal career. After hearing about the twists and turns of what your career has looked like, I'm curious to know, when you first started exploring these more non-traditional pathways, did the idea of stepping away from this conventional legal trajectory ever feel daunting to you? I know you touched on a bit more, but I'd just love to know a bit more how you felt going against the grain and against what other people you had worked with felt like.
Terrifying.
Yeah.
Terrifying. I had wonderful colleagues. I'd built so many great contacts within the industries that I worked in. I knew my stuff. I could do it with my eyes shut, is how I felt anyway. It was so scary because, yes, you have all the obvious things like a secure income and a secure role. Yeah. But to step into something different and to sit in front of your friends and colleagues and say, I'm taking this massive leap. It's scary. It's really, really scary. And you'll have people that go, good on you, do it, have at it. You'll have people that go, oh, that's great. And you can see in their minds where they're thinking, what is she thinking? You'll even have people say things like, and it's not sinister, it's actually well-intentioned, where they'll say, look, if it doesn't work out, you can always come back.
Yeah.
And in my mind at the time, it's like, I know that you're being supportive, but I want it to work out. So I don't already want to be in the mindset of, if it doesn't work, I can come back. I know that if it doesn't work, I can find a career again in law. I know that. But it's really, really daunting. And I really do think amongst lawyers too, there's a lot of, okay, well, you've been a lawyer for X years, so are you now a senior associate? Are you been a lawyer for 10 years? Are you on partnership? Are you going to be a partner? There's these sort of times and expectations, and if you're not ticking off those milestones, what's wrong? Or are you not so good? So there's all of that comes along with it as well. So it's really scary, but I did it.
You did it. And look, it's paid out. Sometimes you just got to, like you said, you can come back if you want to. It's like, it's great to have a plan B, but sometimes you just want to go all in and you've got to back yourself as well.
You have to. If you go into it thinking, well, if it doesn't work, then I can get another job, well, what are you doing it for? So go all in.
Yeah.
Until you can't.
That's amazing. Yeah. And I guess touching on that little piece of advice that you just gave, for lawyers that are in this position like you were once, what advice would you offer them to encourage them about facing these tough feelings that feel daunting, about sort of taking this pivot away from being your quote-unquote traditional lawyer?
Yeah. It doesn't have to be overwhelming. you can take baby steps. You can have the idea and the thoughts and the vision of what you want. But then if you break it down into, okay, so what's some steps I can take today or this week? Small steps. Mm-hmm. You know, you don't have an idea and then the next day storm into work and go, I'm done with all of you and I am out of here. You can if you want. I wouldn't recommend it. So have a plan and start taking those steps and start building, because it doesn't have to feel overwhelming and I have to do it tomorrow, and if I don't do it tomorrow then it's not going to work. Okay. All in your own time. And again, I really do feel that you know, it does work out in the timing that it is meant to. Yeah. I could have done this even earlier, but I didn't. You know, and there were reasons for that. So it all pans out until you get to that point where you are starting to get gently nudged until it's a forceful push. Yeah. Do it. So I just think sit back, take a few big deep breaths, stop worrying about what everyone else thinks and what everyone else will say. I am always reminding myself, other people's opinions of me is none of my business. Yeah. It's none of my business. So if you see it and you want it, do it and block out all the noise.
Now, at the start of the episode, Mia, you're talking about your consulting practice and the types of services that you provide in helping clients navigate communication and negotiation with individuals who have high sort of conflict personalities. Do you feel like lawyers nowadays are currently being trained adequately in order to handle the emotions and the demands that come with the profession and the people that you have to deal with?
Generally speaking, no. And it's not because they don't want to know. It's not because they're silly or anything like that. I just don't think we have focused on the people side of being a lawyer. Yeah. So, you know, as I touched on before, I started Grey Rock Consulting for the individual. And this also applies to individuals who are lawyers, because lawyers have personal disasters and things like that where they're like, how am I in this? I'm educated. I'm a lawyer. I'm able to stick to the facts in my work. And now I am over here personally in this absolute hell, you know. So you've got the personal side of it. And then the way it started to evolve was I would start to speak to, and it started off originally with family lawyers, and I'd speak to family lawyers about what I'm doing and how I can help their clients, and which ultimately helps the family lawyers. Because when you've got a client going into a mediation who is a ball of terror, nerves, anxiety, you know, all those things, it actually makes the family lawyer's job harder, which is not a criticism to the person or to the lawyer, but it's harder. If you have a client going in going, I know the behaviours that are going to come my way, I'm anticipating all the moves, I know what I can and cannot say yes to, and I'm okay with walking away without an agreement, it's a different person. So I started speaking to lawyers to let them know. Then lawyers would sometimes brief me directly to help with particular matters they're working on. And that's when I started going, hold on a minute. There are lawyers who, you know, through my work with them, they'd say, oh, that's really handy to know, I didn't realise, or what would you do over here, Mia, or here's a particular issue. And then I went, oh, hold on, this would help lawyers as well. Yeah. And obviously changed because it's helping the lawyer as opposed to the person who is in it. Lawyers not only have to navigate, you know, someone on the other side who might be that rigid, high conflict or narcissistic personality. They might have a client who is the victim. They might have a client who is the narcissist. Yeah. And it's all very difficult. So I started helping or training lawyers in all of this because I thought this does ultimately still help the individual, because a lawyer who sees it, spots it and knows what to do, you don't have protracted matters, you're not trying techniques that backfire or don't work and wasting people's money. Then I started going, hold on a minute. I was in construction and infrastructure for, let's not put a number on it, but a long time. The personalities are there too. Yeah. It just looks a bit different. So you'll have the bully on the other side. Yeah. You will have those negotiations where, as an in-house lawyer or a lawyer within a law firm, you go, what the hell is that? What do I do? Yeah. Everything I'm trying is backfiring. I don't see any way through this. And it applies in mergers and acquisitions. It applies in construction and infrastructure. It applies in commercial litigation, employment relations. It applies everywhere. Yeah. And that's when I was like, oh, lawyers need this training too. Yeah. So it's really evolved again into something I didn't anticipate. Yeah. But I think I know it's helpful. Yeah. I know it is helping. So now I'm really passionate about that too.
That's amazing. Just sound like you are. I guess speaking on like how important it is, on the flip side of it, how harmful could it be for lawyers not knowing how to, navigate and effectively communicate and sort of just deal with these high conflict and challenging personalities?
Yes. It is harmful on so many levels. So it's harmful for the person themselves because, it can be soul destroying. And again, I'm not exaggerating. They are brutal characters. There's a saying, and I feel bad for this animal, but there's a saying about never wrestle with pigs because you both get dirty and the pig likes it. Yeah. They thrive in conflict. They don't want resolution. Yeah. So personally, you are there pulling your hair out, trying to find solutions, trying to find a way through. If that person is on the other side to you, you've then got a client who's going, how are you going to get me out of this? This is taking 3, 4, 5 years. Yeah. You've told me to avoid court because, my fate is in a third party's hands and it's expensive and all those things. But we are knocking on the door of a trial here. So you're having pressure everywhere. You can also have the toll of the high conflict person themselves loves to complain about you. Yeah. So you might even start getting emails going to your boss or to your client. Your lawyer's the worst. They're a waste of time. Do you know that this is what they did today? And da-da-da-da-da-da. They make complaints to the bodies that regulate your industry, the Law Society and things like that. It's unbelievable the things that they will do to undermine a matter. Yeah. And again, you can't comprehend it because you would never do something like this. So it impacts you in your day-to-day practice. It impacts you emotionally because it is all-consuming. Yeah. It impacts your client. It impacts your firm's reputation sometimes. It's like an octopus with all its 8 arms or tentacles, whichever you want to call them, touching everything. Yeah. And then you've got your other matters which are abandoned because this other person is taking all your time. Yeah. And you're sitting there going, who are they? Nothing I'm doing is working. And then you end up agreeing to something in order to avoid court, for example, and it's not a great outcome.
No. It just sounds mentally exhausting as well, to be honest. Like
awful.
Rocking up each day, having to deal with someone like that, it would just it would actually just break my heart, to be honest.
Yes.
Especially when you feel like there's no effective way out. It's like you're like a rock and a hard place. Like you don't know what to do.
Yes. I had, I'll give an example. I had a negotiation once where we were wanting to add the words acting reasonably into a deed of variation. Now, legally, putting aside, all the issues that can come with those words, it's right for disputes. What does it actually mean? And does it impose a greater burden than acting? All those things, putting the legal stuff to one side. Yeah. The reaction of the person on the other side, and I'm not joking, he was up screaming, banging the table, I can't believe you would want these words, when have I never acted reasonably and when have I not done this and da-da-da. And I'm sitting back and I'm watching, and it was fascinating because, we all took a bit of a break after that. But, from our side, people going, well, there are the legal consequences and maybe it's not very clear and da-da-da-da. Then you've got the people that are saying, oh, my gosh, we're close to getting this done. Yeah. And, he's horrible to deal with and this is not going to get any better. And, he generally does these things, so why don't – and I'm sitting back and I'm listening and it's like it's got nothing to do with the legal issues with acting reasonably. It's got nothing to do with what you're seeing. Yeah. And it's got everything to do with the fact that he has just told you what he won't do when you sign this deed. Yeah. But it was couched in, this is so offensive because I always act reasonably. And I'm like, he's telling you what he will do.
Yeah.
He's telling you what will happen when the target isn't reached.
Yeah.
And he's also distracting you because he wants other things over here. And by making a big fuss over here, we're all focused and terrified about this issue and the deal falling over. So it's not what you see. And it's so complex. And they end up sending you down all these rabbit holes that you don't even realise you're down.
It sounds so multifaceted as well.
It is.
I guess for lawyers who are dealing and have dealt with people like you've just mentioned, what sort of steps or practical measures would you recommend for them to take in order to better handle these situations?
Yes. These are the frameworks that I've developed, whether it's working with the individual or with lawyers in training, because, again, there is so much information out there. But you need frameworks that work and that you can see the path that you're on. And the starting point for everyone is awareness of the behaviours, awareness of who you are dealing with. So for the individual, you know the person that's the problem. Yeah. So the starting point is, what are the behaviours? I will always say to clients, call them whatever you want to me, but in court and outside of this, do not. Yeah. Because unless they are diagnosed with narcissistic personality disorder, you can't call them a narcissist. And no judge will take kindly to that because they're not diagnosed. Yeah. And there's a whole raft of issues on that side too. But call them whatever you want, but let's focus on the behaviours. It's the same with lawyers, no matter what you are in, a corporate transaction, litigation, infrastructure, employment relations issues, wills and estates, family law. It doesn't matter. It is awareness of the behaviours, because once you know them, you see them and you can spot them. And that's where it all begins.
Yeah. Now, before we finish up today, do you have any final words of advice for young lawyers who are listening to this podcast today based off your story and what you've learned throughout your time within the legal profession?
Oh gosh, that's a really broad one.
I know.
Oh, there's so many pieces of advice that I would give. Well, the obvious starting point is get your supervising partner to get me in to train your team. That is the obvious starting point. I say that tongue in cheek, but then I also mean it. You know what? If there's something I've learned, it is trust your instincts. Don't quieten whatever it looks like for you. If it's something you hear, feel, see, sense, if something feels off, if something's not making you feel good, trust it. Don't let anyone tell you that you're wrong or that you don't know what you're talking about or I've done this before, just stick it out, all those sorts of things. Trust your instincts and back yourself. And if you are a bit lost or confused or not sure about what steps to take, the value of finding a mentor or someone who can guide you that you trust, who is open, not someone who will say that's a terrible idea, just keep working 20-hour days and it will all work out for you. It is invaluable, and I've had some wonderful people. There's one in particular, my boss at Lend-Lease actually, Lindsay Pren, and I love her to this day, and I will always love her. She was just brilliant for seeing what's in front of her, strategy, guidance, when things were horrible for you, going, what do you need? What do you need? And how can I help you through this? Finding those people are key. Really, you need someone in your corner who's guiding you, not telling you what to do.
Well, Mia, thank you so much for coming on the show and also just being here in person with me today.
It's very exciting.
It is, isn't it? And thank you for the listener for tuning in. If you enjoy this episode, please give us a rating and a review on whatever platform you use to listen to podcasts, as it will help other lawyers discover and enjoy this show. And if you have any other ideas for episodes we can run in the future, please get in touch at editor@lawyersweekly.com.au. You can also reach us on social media. See you again next time.